And to get us started, I also have a poll for you to take quickly. I got a few more people waiting to answer. So as these are coming in, the key thing to note that if you are looking for something and this session does not provide it, there are still several sessions being offered today through Friday. So you definitely want to check with your campus study abroad office on their website of what information is going to be available for you to attend the rest of this week. So connecting with professional goals. So that's a biggie. So hopefully that this session, for those who are looking to actually be doing the JET program, you get what you need out of this. And so I am going to turn it over to Grant and Kai to just talk about the JET program.
All right. Oh, and LaSharon, it looked like we had a question about where the students can find the recordings later on.
So you want to touch base with your study abroad office. Each campus will have a different place in which this information will be housed.
Okay, great. Cool, then Grant, you want to start?
Okay, great. Thanks, Kai. So welcome everybody. I'm glad to see so many people here interested in the JET program. My name is Grant Minagawa, and I'm the JET program coordinator at the Consulate General of Japan in Los Angeles. And Kai is the JET program coordinator at the Consulate General of Japan in San Francisco. And so we both represent different parts of the state, different consulates in the state. And we're here to talk to you about the JET program. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of information to cover. I'm just going to share my screen. And then we'll go right into, I think we'll do our introductions on the next slide. But anyway, basically, so this is the presentation on the JET program. So today we're going to tell you a little bit about like the overview of the program, the positions, some of the background information, how to apply, all of that sort of thing. And we'll try to save some time for questions at the end. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll say if folks do want to ask questions in the chat, Grant won't be leading the presentation, but I'll be here to answer those questions, as well as bring up good questions if we do want to answer them live.
So a little bit of information about us. So like I said, my name is Grant Minagawa, and I'm the JET program coordinator at the Consulate General of Japan in Los Angeles. And I'm originally from Hawaii. I was on the JET program in Okinawa Prefecture from 2010 to 2014. I spent my first 2 years as an assistant language teacher. So I was teaching at 2 high schools in the prefecture. And then I moved to the Prefectural Board of Education to serve as a prefectural advisor. So I was in a position where I was sort of advising and counseling other people on the program, and also organizing sort of professional development sort of things.
Yeah, and my name is Kai. I was in Kyoto Prefecture first, and then I actually transferred to a different area called Niigata Prefecture in northern Japan. Transfers are rare on the program, but if folks have questions, I'll be happy to answer those. And I was not a teacher on the program. I was what we call Coordinator for International Relations, which is a position where you translate, interpret, use Japanese language skills, which we'll talk about a bit later. But yeah, very excited to have everybody here.
Great. So first of all, some background information about the program. So JET stands for Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. It's Japanese government-sponsored program, one of the world's largest English teaching programs. It was founded in 1987, so it's more than 30 years old. Currently, there are more than 5,000 people on the program, representing more than 50 countries in all 47 prefectures in Japan. And a big sort of emphasis that we have is, I think many times when people hear JET, they think, oh, it's that program where you teach English in Japan. And that's true, but we also want to really emphasize that there is an exchange component as well. So you are going to live and work in a foreign country. You're serving as sort of like a cultural ambassador, right? So you're representing the US, you're representing California, the University of California, whichever campus it might be. And also, everything that sort of has to do with your identity, whether it's your ethnic identity or your national identity or what have you. And you're in the community interacting with locals, your students and also just people in the community, and you're having this one-on-one interaction, which we call grassroots internationalization. And that's a very important part of our program. And so just to clarify, the JET program is a paid full-time job. It's not a study abroad. So we'll get into more details about that later, but it's not a volunteer program either. It's not like Peace Corps or those other programs. It is a paid full-time job. So the expectation is a little bit different here, right? You're not worrying about like exams, credits transferring back. You're not paying for it because it's a job. We're paying you, but then you're also responsible in turn for your students, for your classes, working with your teachers, things like that. So. But very similar to a study abroad, there is a very strong emphasis. There's a really, big exchange component and immersion component, and maybe even more so than a study abroad because you're living and working in a local community. You're not part of a big international cohort in a big university town, right? You might be one of a few, or maybe the only foreign person living in your small local community. And it's a great, like any study abroad too, it's a great opportunity for personal and professional growth and development, stuff like that. So the positions, there are two positions on the JET program. The first position is an ALT, or an assistant language teacher. And so most JETs are ALTs. The vast majority of JETs go on the program as ALTs, and you work in mostly public schools, but there are some ALTs who work in private schools. K-12 range, so elementary, junior high, senior high school. Some JETs are based at one school, some JETs are based as many as like 15 or 20 schools, but the average seems to be somewhere between like maybe 2 to 5. So maybe a main school and a visiting school, or a couple of different visiting schools. And so, there's different combinations here, but basically, you work in the schools. So what does an ALT do? So like the name implies, an assistant language teacher, you're assisting a Japanese teacher of English with their classes. So you're there to, you're there to lesson plan, you're in the classroom with them, but mostly, you're serving, again, that role of being an international, an ambassador, a cultural ambassador, motivating the students, exposing them to different cultures, different languages, different things, and sort of inspiring students to want to learn about more about other countries and other cultures. So, and then so you might be, in addition to that, you might be working on exams, you might be helping students prepare for study abroad, if they're doing speech contests, if they're applying for universities, or taking like English proficiency tests, lots of different things you could be doing. But basically, it depends on the number of schools you have, the level of the schools you have, and the relationship that you have with your JTEs. Also, there's lots of opportunities to get involved outside of school. Outside of the classroom. Many JETs, they'll have their own English club. Some ALTs play sports with their students outside of, during after-school activities. Some JETs eat lunch with their students, especially if they're teaching at elementary or junior high. And some JETs help the students like clean the school. And there's lots of many other things. But basically, there's all of these opportunities to sort of enrich your experience, give the students a chance to get to know you, make a deeper connection here. So I'll let Kai talk about CIR.
Oh, right. So for the CIR position, which again, that's what I was doing on the program, stands for Coordinator for International Relations. And only about 10% of JETs are CIRs. Actually, from the US, only about 5% of JETs are going to be CIRs. So it's a pretty rare position. That said, as a CIR, you work in a local government office utilizing your Japanese language. The real big difference here being that For anyone applying to the ALT position, the assistant language teacher position, you don't need any Japanese at all. We send plenty of people every year with almost no Japanese, you know, begins and ends at konnichiwa type of thing. With the CIR position, you do have to have very strong Japanese. If any of you who are thinking about applying to CIR or studying Japanese know about the JLPT, the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, if you know about that, you should be at about N1 or N2 level, the two highest levels, basically functionally fluent in Japanese before you think about applying to the CIR position. And Grant, if you can go to the next slide. So one of the cool things about being the CIR is that with an assistant language teacher, you know that you're going to be teaching, you know that you're going to be working as an English language teacher, pretty much whatever age, whatever location you teach at. With the CIR position, there's a lot of variation in the duties. There's a lot of variation in the work you do. You could translate, you could interpret, you could create newsletters, planning cultural events. I did presentations on the Olympics. I did presentations on to my local community about America, Civil War history or the NBA, a variety of things. You can also help with sister city associations, receiving international guests. Our prefectures had people coming in from Vietnam for business who I would tour around and then interpret for. We had people from Al Jazeera come in to interview our governor, which I was able to interpret for. And even as a CIR, just like an ALT, you might spend some time teaching English as well. So as a former CIR, one of the coolest things about the position is all of the duties up there I got to do. And it gave me a really wide work experience kind of to build my next career step off of. And especially if you want to use your Japanese professionally, you have high level Japanese already, I do really think it's a wonderful position for a lot of folks. And I'll turn it back over to Grant.
Okay, great. So next, just some basic information about the workplace. So on the program, if you're accepted to the program, you're actually employed by a contracting organization. So it's either a local board of education or a city office or a professional office or something like that. And so you're directly employed by them. The JET contract for the 2021-2022 year will be a 10-month contract period. And so we'll get a little bit more into the details of that later. And sometime during that first year, you'll be asked by your contracting organization, provided that it's mutually agreed upon, they will offer in an extension of 12 months or another year. And so you can renew that, and then the next year, again, up to a maximum of 5 years on the program. But again, we'll get into those details a little bit more later. Typically, JETs work about 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, so about 35 hours. Hours depend a little bit on the office or the school or what the expectation for you is. But the contract does have build in at least 10 days of paid vacation, and you have Japanese national holidays off. So it's sort of different from Western holidays. Of course, you're not going to get American Thanksgiving, Christmas, those sorts of things, but instead you'll get like the coming of age day or respect for the elderly day or Golden Week or things like that. So it's a different set of holidays. So as you can see here, the pay does go up the longer you stay on the program. If you think of this as about 100 yen to the dollar, then we're looking at about $2,800 per month for the first year, which may not sound like all that much, especially for those of you who are in Southern California or in the Bay Area, probably that's very, very little, maybe not even enough to survive on. But in Japan, the cost of living is a lot lower. So just to give you an example, just from talking to many people, it seems like many jets pay somewhere between $400 and $600 a month for rent. And that's one of your biggest costs. So I think it's about half, if not more than, or less than half of what you would spend on rent here, especially in Southern California. And so, there's a lot of opportunities to save money. This is actually, I think, some of it, depending on where you're at in this pay scale, but you actually might be getting paid more than some of the JTs that you work with. And so it's a great opportunity to save money. You can pay back student loans. You can travel around Japan. And then also, in addition to that, the program does include your transportation to and from Japan. So if you're applying through the Los Angeles consulate, then you apply from LA. You depart from LAX. If you apply through the San Francisco consulate, it's San Francisco. But basically, from California to Japan to Tokyo, and then there's an orientation there. then from there, however you get to your contracting organization, whether it's by plane or bus or train or whatever. And then you're also enrolled in Japanese health insurance. So it's very good coverage. So information about your living situations now. So I didn't actually mention it before. I usually have already mentioned it several times by now, but basically something that JETs say all the time is every situation is different. And so, if you look back to our earlier slides, like the role of the CIR is very, very different depending on where you're placed. You could get 1 to 15 or 20 schools. You could get elementary, junior high, high school. And so with living situations as well, you could be in Tokyo, you could be on a mountaintop, in a rice field, on an island. There's so many different sort of positions or sort of possible placements that are out there. And sort of, so what we're going to talk about next is urban versus a comparison of urban versus rural situations. And these are sort of a little bit more extremes. So I think most people will probably fall somewhere in the middle between these two. But just to give you sort of a sample, if you're placed in a rural placement, you'll find that housing is larger and cheaper. You may be paying a lot less for rent. You may have teacher housing, teacher dormitory, or in some cases I've heard of JETs actually living in a house that the Board of Education owns. So, so if you, but in that case, right, you might be paying $100, less than $100. You might not be paying anything in those unique and rare placements. You might be paying no rent. But in the trade-off is maybe you don't get a choice, right? There's nowhere else to live. There's not a lot of options in a small little town. Easier to save money because maybe there's nowhere to spend it. Of course, nowadays you have Amazon and whatever, so you can spend your money online. But maybe there's no shops around, so there's not as much temptation to spend your money, or there's not as many restaurants or bars around, so there's not that temptation there. Some people feel like living in a rural area is like the real Japan, or it's like what they imagined it to be like when they first heard of it. And again, be living in a place where there's few, or maybe you're the only foreign person living there, you're sort of like a local celebrity. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows what you're doing, where you live, those sort of things. You get invited to stuff, and you really become part of the community. And also, if there's not very many foreigners around, then maybe you do kind of really need to learn more Japanese if you want to have a social life. On the other hand, if you live in an urban placement, you'll meet many people who are familiar with foreigners. Maybe you'll meet a lot of people that want to practice their English, or maybe you'll have a big network of JETs. And so maybe you'll have a much stronger support system than somebody who was placed in a rural area. You'll also have more access to all the conveniences. So you have like fast food, you have convenience stores, you have malls, train stations, airports, all sorts of conveniences. Maybe you have a really good public transportation system and you don't need to get a car or something like that. So there's sort of like a trade-off there, right? Pros and cons. So in terms of placements, most JETs get placed in smaller cities or towns. Not as many people get placed in the larger urban areas. You can request up to 3 locations in the application, whether they're regions like Kansai, Tohoku, or Kyushu. You can request individual prefectures, or you can request cities. I would recommend against requesting cities, being really specific in terms of your placement. Just know that requests aren't guaranteed. There's so many different factors that go into placement requests. So, just keep an open mind, do your research on different areas of Japan. There's lots of really interesting places to discover.
I'm also going to jump in here and say to everyone, I'm going to share a document now, which has all of our placements listed out. So you can see where people do go in the program. One thing that happens a lot when people make placement requests is that people tend to request the popular places or places that maybe don't have a lot of JETs. So if you're looking to, up your chances of getting a certain location, using this document will be able to help you kind of figure out, oh, I shouldn't request Kanagawa because there's 3 JETs there. Maybe I'll request Aomori because there's like 100. So I'm going to share that now to everybody. And I'm going to go back.
Another thing I think that's worth noting here is that, you might get placed somewhere that you've never heard of, but many people, like, they go to these rural communities, and they find that people are really warm and welcoming, and they really kind of fall in love with all the unique little things that make their placement really special. And it sort of becomes like a second hometown, some place that you'll come back to every time you come back to Japan, because once you're done with the program, everybody, you're always going to go back to Tokyo or Osaka or something because you have to transfer through those places. But if you don't have this connection to a more rural place, then you just may never even go there. I lived in Japan for 4 years, and I've still never been to Hokkaido because it was on the other end of the country. But there's still many places that I think probably either of us have never been to because of Japan is just so vast and there's so many different places.
I do want to jump in here and say too, I was a rare person who got to live in 2 places in Japan. I'm also very in the sun right now. I was a rare person to live in 2 places in Japan, and my first location was Kyoto, which a lot of people think is like one of the best hits you can get when you go there. It's a cultural capital. It's got a lot of really wonderful things. And then I transferred to a place called Niigata Prefecture, which is in northern Japan. I'd never heard of it. My Japanese friends had never really knew too much about it. And it became by far my favorite spot in the country. So whatever placement you do end up getting on the program, I think there's a lot to love. Like Grant said, there's a lot to love no matter where you go. And honestly, some of the fun of getting a place you've never heard of before is that you're literally starting from zero in terms of what you can discover, what you can find out, because you do go in with no preconceived notions. Also, everyone should request Niigata Prefecture. It is my favorite prefecture. It's the best. Grant probably likes Okinawa, but...
Well, I didn't request Okinawa. I actually did request Niigata because my family is from there. But
yeah.
But
everyone loves Niigata.
Yeah. So even if you request a small agricultural prefecture, you might not necessarily get it. So do your research and be open-minded about where you could go, because I didn't request Okinawa, but it's probably one of the top places that get requested just because. There were a lot of people that were in my prefecture who had been born in Okinawa because they were born on base. And so, and if you just think of where does everybody, the first 5 names that pop into mind, right? You're going to think Kyoto, Osaka, Tokyo. Like those are maybe the places that you might not want to request because there's probably a lot of people that are requesting those places. So next, so on support. So something about the JET program is that, one thing to note is that the program has been around for so long. It's a government-sponsored program, and it's been around for more than 30 years. And so there's a lot of support built into the program. So you're really a lot better taken care of on JET than you would be if you went through a private company in Japan. JET is the only government-sponsored program that operates in Japan. Or even if you went on a government-sponsored program in Korea or other countries. Like I actually did teach in Korea before JET, and JET has a much better sort of support system in place. So in addition to so you get orientations, of course, like before you go on the program at many different levels. You're taken care of by, by the program itself, by your professional advisors, by your contracting organization, and so some of the other added bonuses. The program does offer these free language courses that you can take. While you're on the program, these are sort of like correspondence courses, so you do them online. But it's a great sort of way to sort of structure your studies, because you're not just, if you've already studied abroad, or if you're thinking of studying abroad, or you've visited lots of other countries, you'll know that you don't just go there and absorb everything like a sponge, right? You do kind of need some structure, or at least most people don't. And so you do need some kind of structure in order to kind of keep on top of your studies. So this is a great way of doing that. And then later on, if you feel like you really like teaching, or you really want to sort of get certification to put on your application, so you can continue, just say that you can use Japanese and you want to continue working in Japan, you can get either TEFL certified or you can get the JLPT, and these are grants that the program offers where you get reimbursed for the cost. Also, there's AJET. So I'm going to actually let Kai talk about this, I think, if that's all right, because we didn't actually have it in Okinawa, so go ahead.
So I'll run through this real quick. Basically, AJET stands for the Association of Japan Exchange and Teaching. It's a volunteer organization made up of current JETs. It functions both at the national level, National AJET, which run things like a great website, that has a great online magazine. They offer a counseling service, so you can speak to other JETs anonymously about problems you might be having. They run our special interest groups for the different diverse JET populations out there. You know, if you're in rural Japan, you may be having a hard time connecting to someone of a similar background to you, which is why AJET does run these special interest groups such as Stonewall Japan, which is our LGBTQ group, Jets of African descent, BEDSHET, Asian Pacific Islander AJET. There's a Christian fellowship, there's a Muslim fellowship, really giving Jets a way to connect to folks like them all around the country. And that's at the national level. And then at the prefectural level, AJET kind of functions like, you can think of it like a student council. You know, they're planning events, they're doing your welcome party most likely, they're doing your goodbye party. Some of the more active AJETs have some really wonderful projects that they get up to throughout the year to get Jets active, to get Jets involved in connecting to other Jets in the Japanese community. I'll just use my prefecture, Niigata Prefecture, for example. We had like a English language musical we put on. We had a biannual basketball tournament. We had a soccer tournament that we actually went to a different prefecture, so different AJET groups all came together and participated in that. And this is, of course, in addition to kind of like general gatherings they would plan, you know, resources they would send out and stuff. So it is really wonderful to have that both support at national level, where you're getting the resources, and then at kind of the local level, where you essentially have a built-in community when you do arrive in your prefecture. Like Grant said, some places don't have AJETs. Some places, you know, it's more casual social interaction. They maybe they're setting up their own events without the AJET banner. But one of the nice things that's started pretty recently is that they've broken AJETs into blocks. So if you are really close to another prefecture, you can actually go to one of their block events, and that gets all of the AJET groups, all of the prefectures, all the Jets in that region coming together to do different things. Hokkaido, I know their AJET typically hosts a lot of people for a big snow festival. Again, that soccer tournament I mentioned is a big AJET project where people from all over northern Japan would come together and play soccer. So it is a really cool way to get involved. And oftentimes it's one of the best ways you can connect to both fellow Jets and fellow, you know, Japanese community members. All right.
Great, thanks. So moving on. And there's also, once you're done with the program, there's also the JET Alumni Association. So, you know, like it's basically there's chapters all over the US and all over the world. And not only is it sort of like lots of great groups of people that can help, you know, in terms of reminiscing about the experience, connecting with other people who sort of went through the same experience, but also there's lots of professional development opportunities that are happening all the time, and especially right now during the pandemic. There are a lot of professional development opportunities that are happening at the national level as well. So just to give you an idea, remember there's been more than 30 years of the program, so after 30-something years, there are more than 70,000 people who have gone through the program, representing more than 75 countries. So there's a lot of, it's a really, really big network all over the world and all over the country as well. And Jets go into all sorts of different sort of fields afterwards. It's not just, you know, I think some people think, oh, I'm just teaching English in Japan, so that's all the experience that I'm getting. But it's really, you know, you're getting a lot of experience that you can apply to many different things. Lots of good general experience. And we'll go into more of this later on. But basically, it's a you know, there's a lot of options for you when you're done with the program too. So next I'm going to kind of go through, I have about 10 minutes before we go to break for questions. So I'm going to go through this section pretty quickly. So if you are a senior, you're able to apply this year. But if you're not, the application process remains more or less the same from year to year. So you know, I recommend checking our website in the year that you are able to apply. But basically, this information stays more or less current. So if you are looking to apply this year, or if you're looking to apply the JET program for the JET program, you do need to be a U.S. citizen to apply through our consulates here in the U.S. and through the Embassy of Japan in Washington, D.C. So if you're not a U.S. citizen, there are at least, I mean, there are like 50-something other countries where that take JET applicants and participants. So you just have to apply from the country of your citizenship. So I think I have the link here. I'm just going to drop a link here into the chat, and this is for this is a website with all of the embassies of Japan and consulates of Japan in all different countries. So you find your Embassy of Japan, and you can find the application instructions there. Might be a different timeline, might be different procedure. Everything going forward applies to American. And you do need to have a bachelor's degree before you depart. So if you're graduating this fall, if you're graduating in the spring, even if you're graduating this summer, because departure will be a little bit later than normal, you can apply for the program now. And we'll go into the schedule a little bit later. But also, you know, because you'll be living in a foreign country with a different level of support, and maybe not the same level of support that you're used to, much less that support in English. We do ask for people to be in good mental and physical health. These other ones apply if you've lived in Japan for an extended period, or if you've been on the program before. So I'm not going to get into too much of that over here. But again, if you're teaching English or translating things to English, you do need to have English skills. You don't need to be an expert on Japan or Japanese culture, but just have an interest and be interested in learning more. And also for a CIR, you do need to have the Japanese language ability.
Oh, just to hop in on the Japanese language thing for the CIR position, we don't require any tests. You don't need to have the Japanese language proficiency test. I did not have it when I applied and was accepted. It is just a good idea to know where your Japanese language skills are. So if you're at like a very high level of Japanese, don't think that you need to take the JLPT to ensure that you are selected.
Oh, yeah, great, thanks. So what makes a great JET? So if you look at this list here, right, I think it probably, you can probably see some similarities with, you know, what makes a great study abroad candidate or something, right? If you're going to be living in a foreign country, you need to be adaptable, patient, flexible, be open-minded, willing to try new things, be able to take things sort of as they come, go with the flow, those sorts of things, right? Living in a foreign country, you need to have a positive, you know, you need to have a positive attitude, because things can and will eventually, you know, go wrong, maybe. You're living on your own, right? You're not, the program does have a great level of support, but we're not able to hold your hand every day, every step of every day. So, you know, having initiative, being a little bit independent, being a little bit self-sufficient, that'll go a long way. And then also JET, remember it's Japan Exchange and Teaching. So here's like the J, here's the E, and here's the T. So, right, just sort of making sure that your goals and your interests align with the program. So this is the application timeline for this year. And again, more or less, this stays the same from year to year. So the application comes out in late September, early October. The application closes around mid-November. Then it gets reviewed by the embassy in Washington, D.C. If you make it past that application phase, then it comes to the consulates, to you know, all the different consulates across the U.S. for interviews. Usually the interviews happen a little bit earlier, but we're doing them a little bit different. We have a different timeline this year because of everything going on. You find out your results. I mean, well, after the interviews, then it gets reviewed in Tokyo. Then you find out the results. If you get in or if you don't get in, then we'll need some more documentation, just because a lot of things can change between now and then. Then we'll notify your placement, and we'll start getting you ready in terms of orientations, visa processing, travel arrangements, all those sorts of things. And departure for next year is going to be, for the 2021-2022 JET year, will be in September. And that's because of the Olympics, which was moved back from this year. So, so we don't usually, for LA, departure happens in late July, and for San Francisco, departure happens in early August. But because of the Olympics, we've pushed everything back. So if you're not applying this year, more or less this will stay the same. Maybe departure date and interview date might shift a little bit, but please check our website, and you'll find the information there. It's 100% online application. So you go to our website, you can make an account there. You can upload all your documents there. It's much easier than it was before. You can talk directly to the JET program coordinators in Washington, D.C., because they're the ones who basically are handling this phase of the process. So it's really easy. So I think, Kai, did you want to go over this one? Yeah,
so we'll talk about this slide. Basically, I think a lot of you who are listening in are not seniors. So you'd be thinking about applying in the future, your sophomores, juniors, freshmen, what have you. And so I think there's a few ways to make sure your resume stands out, to make sure that you have the right skills and experience we're looking for on the JET program. The first thing is that we're looking for people who have a wide array of skills rather than one really specific skill. If you have wonderful Japanese, but that's it, you know, a much stronger application would usually have very good Japanese, but also teaching experience, work experience, etc. So definitely think about, diversifying your skill set, diversifying your experience. Again, there's no single experience that will ensure you get selected into the JET program. Definitely, if you are a freshman, sophomore, junior, if you have some time before you be thinking about applying, I'll say that the 3 experiences that can really help an application are having teaching or tutoring experience. And this can be classroom teaching, but it can also be casual tutoring. It can be working with kids at like a summer camp or something. Any experience where you're, again, teaching someone. Having a broad involvement in Japanese cultural activities. This could be taking Japanese courses at your university, could be getting involved in, again, anything related to Japanese culture, be it taiko, be it martial arts, be it tea ceremony, what have you. And actually go about this and say any involvement in international, intercultural activities. If you're helping out with, Chinese New Year festivities for something, if you're helping out with like Hispanic Heritage Month or something, those kind of things are also really great to see on a JET program application. So again, if you're not involved in teaching, if you're not involved in Japanese or intercultural activities, that's something to think about. And certainly, again, if you're a few years out from applying, having work experience or volunteer experience is another really great thing. Again, does not need to be a 9 to 5, can be a part-time job, doesn't have to be related to JET or teaching or intercultural things at all, but having some kind of work experience is going to be something that does help an application. So again, for seniors, you're applying right now, there's probably not enough time to take care of all this stuff. But for anyone who is a little bit younger, who has a few years before the application, if you think there's any area here where you could really improve on, it's definitely something you can do to bump up your application. We also got a lot of questions about TESOL, and if you need a TESOL certificate, you don't need it, but certainly something that can help an application, and that does fall again to the teaching tutoring experience. All right, and I'll turn it back over to Grant.
Thanks, Kai. So we just have a couple more slides here, and I'll just kind of get through these so we have some time for questions. So the application, it's a very, the JET program is a very competitive program. So when the time comes, if you're not a senior yet, right, or if you are a senior now and you're applying this year, please just be very mindful of everything while you're doing this. Read all the instructions carefully, be very careful about everything, and be very deliberate and be very sort of detail oriented, because it is a professional job application, right? It's not, and of course you want to put your best foot forward for a study abroad application or for any other application as well. But really, like I said at the beginning, this is a job, right? It's not a study abroad, it's not a volunteer opportunity. So you want to make yourself look as professional as possible. That means, like when you're scanning your documents, you don't hold up their paper with crinkles in the paper and your thumb is in the picture. And when you're taking a picture of your transcript, scan it. If at all possible, use a scanner. Spend a lot of, list all of your relevant experiences in as much detail as possible, but really pay attention to the essay, because that's the most important part of your application. That's the best place for you to showcase your originality, what makes you unique, what makes you a good fit for the program, what makes you a good fit for the position of ALT or CIR that you're applying to. Proofread your everything, but really spend a lot of time on the essay. Like what Sharon mentioned in the comments, go to the campus, your campus career center or your campus writing center, have them look at it, show it to professors, show it to classmates, just get some feedback, make sure you write a really strong essay. As Kai had actually mentioned when we were planning this thing, right? Like a very strong essay can bring up like a weaker application, or a weak essay can bring down a stronger application too. So just be really careful when you're doing that. And then of course be aware of the deadlines, and especially in terms of requesting your letters of recommendation and also requesting your transcripts. Do you want to add something?
Oh, sorry, I was hopping up for the Q&A. But yeah, as Grant said, the essay is the single biggest thing on the application. Give it time. If you're a senior right now, you're applying, give it time, have someone look at it, have a JET alum look at it if you can. If you have a writing lab on campus, have them look at it, have a professor look at it if you have a professor who do want to do that. But it really can, as Grant said, bring up a kind of okay application. It can bring it to the next level. Same thing if your essay is bad, it can take a really great application and make sure it's someone who does not get to the interview stage.
Yeah, and you still have 3.5-ish weeks, so you still have time, right? So, but don't wait till the last minute. Definitely don't wait till the last minute, because the last thing you want is to be trying to hit send on November 20th at like, whatever, and then the server is crashing because everybody is trying to do that. So don't wait till the last minute. But basically, right, that's basically it for our presentation. So please check our website. That's where you'll find lots of great information. You'll find videos, frequently asked questions. You'll find the portal you can access through the website. This is the contact information for both of our offices. Do we want to just stick them in the chat, I guess?
Yeah, I'll put those in there.
Okay. And so that's it for the main part of our presentation. But I think now we're going to switch over to questions. Did we have some questions in the chat too?
Yeah, so we have a person asking, oh, sorry, Sharon, did you want to say something?
No, that was me, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so we had one question and then we'll just open it up. Can I still apply to the JET program if I do a study abroad program in Japan? You can apply from Japan. And certainly if you have any study abroad experience, that's great, especially if it is Japan. You can apply from Japan. Typically interviews are held in person. So if you're in Japan in February, you should expect to come back to the US to interview. With COVID, this year may be different, but again, the typical rule is you do have to be in the country in person to interview. But certainly the actual application, if you're in Japan doing the application, that's totally fine. Doesn't matter where you're doing the initial application from.
And also where you set your interview location is also where you're sort of expected to depart from as well. So sort of keep that in mind too.
And yeah, if anybody had any questions now, sorry about that.
Is it okay to ask now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm applying this year, but I am in the process of getting my TEFL certificate. So how will that look on my application compared to not having one versus having completed it already?
So for TEFL, you do need to have it completed to put it on your application. If you don't have it completed yet, you can't put it on. That said, it is something you can certainly bring up if you're selected for an interview. You can say, I successfully did it. And it's something that if you feel really strongly about, people have put in their essays before. But if you don't have the actual certificate completed, you can't put it on the application yet.
Okay, thank you.
And,
sorry. For the letters of recs, can you, let's say you're working on a lab right now, could you have your graduate student write you a letter?
Good question. Grant, you want to take this one? And then we got some questions in the chat, so I'll answer those.
Yeah, that's a good question. So according to our website, if you're still in school, at least one of them has to be an academic reference. And I think it says that it should be a professor and advisor.
Yes.
So, I mean, really, we don't tell you yes and no to these sort of things. You really, we kind of leave it up to you to decide. But I would say that might not count as a professor.
Yeah. So have like one academic professor, and then you could do one as a grad student who overlooks everything you do.
I think that would be all right. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that says you can't have two academic references or something, but the only stipulation is that one of them needs to be an academic reference if you're still in school. So yeah, I think if you use that as like your second reference, I think that would definitely be okay, as long as they're in a position where they're sort of like overseeing your work.
Yes, definitely. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I know there's a lot of people in here, but who's next?
Hi, thanks for putting this on. I was wondering, since COVID's happened and stuff, is the program going to be affected at all by COVID?
So you might have heard for the 2020 program, for folks who were supposed to go this year, we delayed a lot of things. And that was just because Japan had completely shut the borders to prevent the spread of COVID. We are working to get the 2020 jets over there right now. The schedule that Grant put up before with that September departure, that is what we're aiming for in 2021. It is possible if there's another serious outbreak that things could get pushed back, they could get delayed, but we are aiming for September 2021. Of course, your safety as jets, your safety of the Japanese community, that's our most important focus. So if you are ultimately selected for jet and we do have to delay the thing, we do have to delay departure, we're still gonna make every effort to get you to Japan as soon as it is safe to get you over there.
Okay, cool, thank you.
So, if last year's participants were pushed back, does that and we 2021 applicants or this year's applicants that also get selected? What happens if there's like too much staff? Then do we just double up, or do people get cut off, or?
Well, okay. So yeah, so if you've been reading forums or Reddit or whatever, you'll know that yeah, we did allow some people who were accepted this year to defer to next year because of COVID. Whether or not that affects how many people are accepted, it's difficult to say because there are a lot of positions open right now. There are some people who have taken on an extra year, but people are still leaving the program when their time is up or when they feel like they're finished with their term. And we don't know what it'll look like in terms of how many, for example, alternates are going to go on the program, or how many positions will remain open for the whole year. So it's very difficult to say. So we're not going to, unless the contracting organization wants to have people sort of double up, that's not something that we're going to force on them. So just as far as the number of positions, it really depends on a lot of different factors, but we probably will still see many people returning home next year. So it's difficult to say how that will affect selection and placement.
And just to give an example, in regular years for San Francisco, we've sent as many as 130 and we've sent as few as 80. So even in regular years, we have a huge variation in the number of JETs who are accepted onto the program. That said, like Grant said, we have a lot of open positions. So I think a lot of people are concerned, since folks did defer, if it's going to accept acceptance rates. And I don't think it's going to have as huge an impact as anyone is thinking. Even again, in regular years, sometimes we send a lot of JETs. Sometimes, for whatever reason, we don't send as many JETs. So I would definitely think this is still going to be pretty much in line with the regular application year in terms of general acceptance rates.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I guess since Kai brought up the numbers, just between our two consulates in San Francisco and Los Angeles, I know that we do. Both of us do also cover an extra state as well, but our numbers are very, very high considering the rest of the country. Like Kai said, 80 to 130 in LA. We've sent 120, 160. So there's a lot of people that depart from California. So of course, there's lots of applicants as well, but proportionally to the rest of the country, there's a lot of people that depart from California.
While you are answering the last few questions, I'm going to launch the last poll.
Okay, sure.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, I had a couple of questions. I don't remember because I was TEFL certified in 2017. I imagine I would have to do the certification again, but I wasn't sure. How long does that last?
That's a good thing to check, actually, probably with the place you got certified from. I know the JLPT does have an expiration date. I'm not certain if TEFL certification has expiration date. So I checked the application guidelines on the JET portal, and then also the place you got your TEFL certification from, to see if there is a 5 or 10 year limit that you'd have to renew it.
Okay, definitely. My second question, you mentioned, looking professional, having a professional stance about yourself. How important exactly are, I guess you could call them looks, would be in this program? For example, I have gauged ears and a nose piercing. So I'm wondering how would that affect my certification, if at all? Would they care? Does that matter too much?
I don't think it'll, it probably won't affect most likely it will not affect anything to do with your acceptance, but you probably would be asked during the interview if you'd be willing to take them out. I think one thing to note is that especially if you get placed in elementary, kids are a lot more handsy than they are in the US, and you don't want someone yanking your piercing out. So people definitely pull it. If you lean down towards them, they're going to grab it.
Okay.
That could be dangerous. So if it's something that can come out, then that might be useful.
Okay, yeah, I'm certainly open to taking them out. I was just curious, like if it was like yeah, you definitely don't want to, wear that if you're being interviewed or whatnot. And then my last question, how much would your major impact your application? So if I got because I'm currently working on my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, would that help or maybe not help so much? Like, would I take that into consideration on my application as being a positive or kind of neutral?
Like, so for the application, really, any major is okay as long as you're getting your bachelor's degree. So it doesn't really matter what your major is. But that being said, if you have something in your major that you're able to apply towards the program and the goals of the program and the position, like for example, even if it is engineering, if you were in a lab and you were teaching other people, then that's definitely something you probably want to mention, because it speaks towards, like, being able to teach others and that sort of communication sort of aspect. So I mean, you could probably sort of redirect things into a way that sort of that sort of boosts your application. So I mean, just having a seemingly random major doesn't necessarily discount you from the program.
Yeah, the actual major isn't going to affect acceptance at all. Certainly, if you have like a Japanese major, that does give you a lot of chance to have taken Japanese language courses and stuff, which can help an app. But I've seen dance majors, history majors, engineering, all kinds of sciences, obviously lots of English majors. So the actual degree you're getting won't affect, and especially if you have you're getting a degree and you have all the relevant skills that we're looking for in other areas.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Maybe one more question, quick.
Okay, yeah.
Or no more questions, cool.
Any other questions? Last call. Okay, well, if that's the case, then that's totally fine. Again, if you have any questions for us later, please feel free to email us. Those emails that we have on the screen here go directly to us. I'm in LA and Kai is in San Francisco. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And also please feel free to check our website. I know you do need to get to a next session, so we'll end it here. But thank you so much for coming today, and we hope to see you at interviews perhaps in the next year or next few years.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for coming.
I will be sending a follow-up email with this, with their contact information for anyone who did not get it. So thank you all for joining us today.
Do we? All right, bye everybody.
I always hang out a few minutes just in case someone's like lagging to ask that last minute question around.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm back.
That last minute lagging question, but I didn't want to ask in front of everybody else.
Yeah.
I know. I guess it's the same thing as in the classroom, right? Like you have like the kids that kind of linger towards the end, like, oh, by the way, I want I feel like I don't know if that happens to you, Kai, but like a lot of times when we have our
our info sessions,
there's always somebody that's like you didn't do you have any questions? Okay, we're done, goodbye. And then the
everybody shows up at your podium asking questions. I'm like, didn't I just ask like 10 minutes ago who has questions, and now all of you are standing here? What's going on here?
I get sometimes like it's a personal question or like a really specific thing, but sometimes it's like I'll definitely get questions where I'm like, I don't know if you listened to what I was just saying for everything, but okay. But yeah, I think that went really. Oh, do we have someone in here?
I'm not letting them in because I don't think they realize this session is done.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, I was like, huh? Cool. That I think went really great. Thank you, Sharon.
No, thank you guys for joining us. I was very happy. We had, I don't know if it was Wi-Fi issues, some people coming in, popping in and out, but I thought it was well attended. I know one UCR professor was sitting in on this session. From the
yeah, I saw a JET alum too, who's I think the study abroad coordinator at UCSC now.
Yeah.
Nice.
So for me, it's nice to see that, especially the professors are like, okay, what are they saying? So if I have students have questions, I know what's going on. So
yeah, no, that was really good. Cool. And then Grant, you and I are going to do a meeting after this, right?
Yeah. Do you want to stick to Zoom or should we hop on Teams or?
Oh, we could do Teams too. Yeah, I think we can hop on Teams since that's usually easier. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Sharon. This is great. Yeah, 60-something kids.
Yep.
And cool. I think we're all set, right?
All righty then. Thank you guys so much. I will.
No problem.
If I've got questions, then I'll pass them on. If anyone has questions that.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'll pass them on to them. But I am going to forward your contact information to everyone who was on the list.
Perfect.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks again for hosting, and good luck with the rest of the study out there.
Good luck with all this. Yeah.
Well, my major part is through tomorrow, so.
Okay, good.
Thank you both.
All right, well, yeah. Thank you much.
You too.
You have a great day too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.